From WWE completely changing its kid-friendly image to Monday Night Raw going in a more mature direction. It seems like the wrestling franchise might be bringing back more adult content. You can't deny that WWE looks very different today from what it used to be. These days, they're not known for hardcore violence. Sure, some fans might argue, but let's be real here. Compared to the wild days of the 90s, things are pretty tame right now. And hey, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, at least fighters don't have to risk their lives for dumb segments. But the violence hasn't been totally left in the past. For example, Roman Reigns crashing an ambulance with Braun Strowman inside, back in 2017. Sure, they took some precautions, but seeing something like that is definitely a blast from the past, straight out of the Attitude Era. And who could forget when Kevin Owens split Vince McMahon's head open with a headbutt that same year? Now here's where things get interesting. The company's been conducting surveys where they're asking fans about a tier system for the WWE network. It's like they're testing the waters, looking to dip their toes back into the pool of violence. Can you imagine the return of those edgy, hardcore days? And speaking of the survey, it also asked fans if they wanted content similar to New Japan on the network, which is known for its bone-crushing, realistic action. But hold up, that's not even the main event. They also threw in a little surprise, and what is that? An ECW reboot, along with edgier original programming. Now, for those who don't know, ECW was kind of the rebellious cousin of the wrestling world. It was all about hardcore matches, bloodshed, and mature content. WWE has tried resurrecting it before, but let's just say it didn't work out. They missed the mark by a mile, thinking they could capture the essence of ECW just by slapping a label on it. Clearly, they think there's a market for a return to a more violent product, and they may be onto something. But here's the thing, bringing back the Attitude Era would come with a lot of backlash, especially from social media. The Attitude Era in WWE was super unpredictable. You never knew what was coming next, but that's not the only thing that made it so iconic. One of the biggest things was the colorful language. I mean, sure, they wouldn't just drop the F-bomb on TV, but Stone Cold and DX knew how to cuss up a storm. And of course, how could I forget about the matches? The Attitude Era was notorious for hardcore brawls that left fans on the edge of their seats. Whether it was Steve Austin going head-to-head with The Undertaker or The Rock facing off against Mick Foley, these matches were brutal, bloody, and pushed the boundaries of what was deemed acceptable in the world of pro wrestling. But what drew the most criticism when looking back on the Attitude Era is the way female performers were portrayed. While women's wrestling is now taken as seriously as men's, back then, the focus was primarily on their sex appeal rather than their in-ring abilities. It was pretty problematic. Now, some women like Trish Stratus and Lita managed to break the mold and showcase their wrestling skills, but they were often involved in segments that emphasized their physical appearance, making them wear revealing clothes, or engaging in contests that objectified them. Whilst a little bit of sex appeal in entertainment isn't inherently wrong, if WWE were to bring back matches like evening gown contests or bra and panties matches, they'd have to deal with a lot of backlash. And by that, I mean the show would probably face cancellation campaigns before the bell even rings. If that wasn't bad enough, the show's sponsors probably wouldn't accept a return of the Attitude Era. The issue is, while they might have that itch to bring back the Attitude Era, it's not solely up to them. The advertisers and TV networks they rely on to bring in the big bucks have a say too. USA seems open to the idea of Raw shifting to a TV 14 rating, but let's not forget about SmackDown and Fox. It airs at 8 p.m., right in Fox's Family Hour. I doubt Fox would be thrilled about taking it down a more adult-oriented path. Gotta keep it friendly for the little ones, you know? And speaking of kids, the Fed has been all about that family-friendly image for quite some time. They've been marketed to the younger audience for 15 years now, with campaigns led by none other than John Cena. Those sponsors who pour in the dough for the company, they'll have a lot to say about any changes that veer toward more mature content. Now let's take a trip down memory lane. Back in 1997, when WWE was struggling financially, they took a major risk with the Attitude Era. They decided to target an older audience even if it meant potentially losing some existing fans. But here's the thing, despite any complaints about the current product being lackluster, WWE is doing very well financially. They've got those lucrative TV deals, the WWE Network made bank with the move to Peacock, and merchandise sales are bringing in tons of money. So, while longtime fans may yearn for the days of wild unpredictability, you need to remember that WWE executives are playing it safe for now. They probably won't rock the boat too much when it comes to their financial success. Now, whilst it's true that the company has seen big changes over the past 18 months, from Vince's retirement and subsequent return just 6 months later, to Triple H, Stephanie McMahon, and Nick Khan taking over both the creative and business sides of WWE for the most part, we're still talking about a multi-billion-dollar company. Major changes can't just happen so easily. For now, it seems the current creative team is sticking around. So we'll have to wait and see if any more shifts are in store. If they really want to bring back the Attitude Era, though, Triple H needs to make even more changes. You see, under Vince, the company became a well-oiled, scripted machine. Only top talents like Reigns, Lesnar, and Orton were allowed wiggle room in promos, while the rest had to stick to the script like it was gospel. Now, here's why this scripted nature is a big deal. WWE themselves have acknowledged that the best characters of the Attitude Era were exaggerated versions of the wrestlers' real personalities. They had the freedom to improvise and let their true selves shine. Take Stone Cold and The Rock, for example. They came up with their own catchphrases, had a say in their merchandise designs, and would even call audibles in the heat of the moment, and boy, did it pay off. But fast forward to later years, and wrestlers are scolded for going off script. We've seen people punished on screen, or sometimes even released from their contracts if they got themselves over with the crowd without waiting for Vince's blessing. Anyway, that brings me to the company's flagship show, Monday Night Raw. CEO Nick Khan said that discussions are ongoing to make the final hour of Raw more adult. Now, we've all had our share of debates about its 3-hour runtime. But believe it or not, Raw started as a humble 1-hour broadcast before growing into a 2-hour extravaganza in 1997. But for over a decade now, it's been stretching our patience for a full 3 hours. Yep, ever since its monumental 1000th episode back in 2012, it's been a marathon of body slams, promos, and surprise returns. Recently, Nick Khan spilled the beans at the 2023 JP Morgan TMT conference. He straight up said, "Raw is 3 hours. We don't anticipate that changing." He said it loud and clear. So don't hold your breath for a shorter Raw anytime soon. Now, we've all wondered if less is more when it comes to Raw. But that's not the only thing Nick said. He also talked about making that third hour, the 10 to 11 p.m. time slot, more adult. Now, Khan has mentioned this idea before, suggesting that they could introduce more mature content during that hour, allowing for a bit more freedom in terms of language, violence, and even potentially some edgier themes. This would probably switch things up from those downright tedious episodes we sometimes have to sit through, like this year's Raw after WrestleMania. But it's important to note that WWE previously toyed with the idea of shifting to a TV-14 rating, but ultimately stuck with their TV-PG approach because it was a safer bet. So I'm not sure how far they'll go this time. Here's the deal though, writing that third hour has been a struggle for the Fed's creative team, including Triple H himself. And the viewers have spoken too. The third hour of Raw in December 2022 was the least watched hour in the entire 30-year history of the show. So clearly something needs to change if the company wants to keep the ratings up. I guess only time will tell whether a more adult version of Raw is actually possible. So from the franchise's flagship show, possibly going in a more mature direction, to the WWE completely changing its kid-friendly theme, it seems like the wrestling show might just be bringing back adult content